Hey, look, the hands move. And it's true, you could wind it and the hands would go around and then they would just sit there.
Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go!
I wanted to show this because it's Hall China and it's the Aladdin Teapot. This shape is called Aladdin because it looks like Aladdin's lamp. It was done in the 1930s. High style Art Deco. This mauve color is one of the harder ones to find. And the important thing is it has its infuser. I'll show you what that looks like. This was if you were brewing with tea leaves directly. So it would have this and you could put the leaves in and then pour the water through and brew directly into the pot. Those are often missing. If you see it in the top seams, like it's just by itself, well, that means it's actually missing a part. So that's something to know if you're out there thrifting or reselling, is that these have 3 pieces originally. On the bottom, I'll show you a few things about the marks. They made these for a while. If you see the round ink stamp that says Hall and the letters are capital letters, that's going to be before 1969. Then they switched to upper and lowercase, and it's a television screen shaped mark. This one also is marked with the gold Hall 6 cup. The gold mark really was only done if they applied gold on the edges, and even then not always, but because this one had the gold striping, they went ahead and put the mark on. This means this would have been higher end premium product back in the time it was made, and they sold for more then, and they sell for more now. Here's a very sweet needlepoint, and this one was done by Sarah Mary Calhoun. This is the Sultan of Turkey, she says, and she's done it in multicolor. I would say this is going to date sometime to the mid-Victorian period. Just a fun and different design, priced at $275. Each one of these is unique. They were done by one person for one purpose, and that's it. So if you collect these sorts of things, every one you buy will not be like any other you'll ever see, and there's something really exciting about that to primitive collectors. This guy has a fun space. By day he is a school teacher, and on the weekends and for fun he is an antique dealer. He does the St. Petersburg show. If you see my old video from the St. Pete show in January, he was there. He has a lot of advertising, a lot of road maps, starting as little as $1, more for the unusual ones like the Sinclair with the dinosaur. This one's priced at $6. It's actually a pretty good deal. I've seen Sinclair sell for $10 and $12 online. This is definitely a space where you can buy certain things. He's got a bunch of these tin cars from the 1950s and 60s. Something we see time to time that Christmas collectors like is this box set of Tipperary smoking mixture. This was something to give your dad at Christmas in about 1950. And Santa Claus points to the box where you can see in the cutout. Because we're in Florida, there's sand pails. There are definitely sand pail collectors. These earlier ones by Ohio Art and other companies can go for $35 and $45. He also has a shelf full of Roseville. These are original 1930s and 40s pieces, no reproductions. Prices are good. The Snowberry vase on the right is only $65. The candlesticks are only $25. That seems like a really great deal. I think there's possibility for someone to have some margin in that. The most expensive piece I think he has is the Apple Blossom vase with the handles. He's got the nice bud vase. And then we see something I've always really liked. This is Weller Pottery out of Ohio, and this is called Coppertone. Coppertone featured frogs. You see big elaborate vases or little cash pots like this, but they always have this glaze with the spattering and a frog somewhere in the motif. It's one of their most collectible lines, and I think they made 30 or 40 pieces in the line all in all, so there's a lot to collect. This one's priced at $135. Copper tone always sells for premium prices, always has. We think of a lot of gold-painted things when we hear Burwood and Sirocco when you get into the plastics of the 60s and 70s, but these are going to be early 60s when Burwood is just starting to do injection molding. And look at these great horses. Love the red color and the triangular shape. Those are priced at $75 for the set, but I haven't seen those before. I have seen this, however. This is a rather famous print called Pharaoh's Horses, and you see the 3 horse heads together, a popular Victorian motif. And in this frame, it's rather dramatic. The frame is encrusted. It's got the white and black rope style inner banding to really set off the print. And that's why this one is priced at $275. I've seen this print for less, but I've never seen it in as good a frame. I'm familiar with these because in the Northwest we had people from Canada who collected these. These are pot lids, anchovy paste, the tooth powder. Most of these seem to be those type of categories. There's a cold cream. One says that it was a prize medal winner at the World's Fair for ex-Bazin of Philadelphia's poultice, whatever the poultice was. They are collectible in and of themselves, particularly the scenic ones. There are some that had lovely scenes on them because, again, this is right when consumerism is starting. So how do we distinguish our product? Well, at first we just talk about our product in great detail like these do. But then, well, people know what the product is and they really want something else. So that's when we start seeing them being stylized with colorful chromolithographic transferware scenes. These are going to price in the $50 to $100 range typically. This fellow has telephones. This is the classic telephone that you saw from the Bell system, the Western Electric from the 1940s. This was in lots of different houses. You'll see it on the set of I Love Lucy in the early 50s. Here's another version to the right of it. This one actually has a light that would light up, so this must have been an extension phone. That one's going to be a little more valuable as a result. They also did a wall version in that time. But then came the era where you could buy your own phone, and all of a sudden we see designer phones in the 70s. This one's a Bell system. This one's priced at $85. I can honestly say I've never seen this one. It's got the retractable cord. It's got the bell in the middle for Bell system. And then you cover it up and it just sort of disappears. But if you really didn't want to look at the phone, here's this one. This looks like it should have been on Bob Newhart's desk in the 70s and probably was. And you open and lo and behold, another retractable phone with a nice long cord, so then you don't have the cord getting in your way. It works well. This is only priced at $35. I know some of these deco phones, as they called them for decoration, can sell for as much as $50 and $65. Here's another cool local St. Pete thing. This is a beach chair. This would have been from Spa Beach, which was the main beach downtown right in front of all the hotels in St. Pete. This wicker will date to about 1920, priced at $125. I've never seen one of these before. Some local collector will love that. Perfume bottles galore. This dealer has them. It makes sense because of all the jewelry and other boudoir items. There's so many it's hard to really pick out and show you, but what I will show you up front, because it's local in a sense, is this. This is the Lips perfume by Salvador Dali. The Dali Museum is here in downtown St. Pete. It's been here since 1982. The perfume with his famous lip and nose design was done specifically for sale in the 1980s. They're just really cute. I think I got $35 for the last one that I sold. It is priced at $15. Below we have a nice Czech Glass perfume from the 1930s. You can see the depression glass color. It has a nice etched top. These have come down quite a bit in price. They used to be $75 to $100 starting. Now they're about $45 to $50 starting, so they've become more affordable for collectors. I did a Czech Glass vase as my daily post on Instagram a few days ago, and here are these really wonderful Czech Glass Parrot vases, a bud vase and two sterling collared vases. These are hand-painted out of the 1920s. Czechoslovakia wasn't a country until 1918, and then the Second World War cut off their production to us, so There's just a nice 20-year period where wonderful Czech glass was made. They loved the bright colors. It was very popular in the Art Deco era. And these are just really sweet. I believe they're priced at $65 each, and because they're hand painted and because of the parrots in this market, that's not a bad deal. Pocket and wrist watches, again, because this is a heavily jewelry focused store, you're going to see these pieces, but these are mainly for men. They are priced, the pocket watches, in the $100 to $150 range. The wrist watches can be as low as $35 to $40 and up from there depending on the design. And then of course there's a whole bunch of Mickey Mouse watches as well. Mickey Mouse saved the Ingersoll Watch Company from bankruptcy in the Depression. They got the rights to make the first Mickey Mouse watch. It was a cheap throwaway watch for kids, and they sold a ton of them. And that got a lot of other companies interested, and so over the years we've seen all sorts of different companies, including Seiko and Timex and other firms, make Mickey Mouse watches. The originals can go for $200 to $300. A lot of people know Dorothy Thorpe for her silver fade glassware, but they don't necessarily recognize these textured pieces that also use the silver, and in some cases lavender, green, and gold colors to create the same thing. I've heard people refer to these as atomic glass because of the burst out from the center. This one has a good shot of her logo, so let's look at that. Sometimes you'll see that little design on the bottom of something and it's just etched, and that is Dorothy Thorpe. So be aware of that, because you will sometimes see her etch pieces and they don't necessarily say Dorothy C. Thorpe Incorporated, California, like this later one from the 60s did. So that is a clue. You need to memorize that label if you're looking at Dorothy Thorpe glassware. Another thing this dealer has is a lot of old drugstore stock. So these are new old stock. These are items that were never used, and here they are brand new in the original boxes, including these little devices, which are definitely recommended not to be used unless you really do want to have children after all. We've got a Davy Crockett toy watch here. There were a lot of toy watches made in the 50s and 60s for kids that didn't actually have any innards. They didn't run. It was just to say, look, I've got a watch. Hey, look, the hands move. And it's true, you could wind it and the hands would go around and then they would just sit there because it wasn't really meant to be used at all. Some gas station memorabilia from the Sinclair dealers. Over in the back, he's got the Happy Dan puzzle. His prices are really great, and you know, I'm gonna shop this space before I leave after I finish this video, because I see things that I think I can take somewhere else and make money on. He really does have cool stuff. He's also got an original Coca-Cola sign with the fishtail shape. That's going to date to the 50s, and he's got it priced over $300. That is a hard one to find. Those shapes are difficult to find in original unblemished condition. And then pass at your own risk. Oil company from an old gas station. Then you see the vintage candy boxes. I want to zero in on this. He only has $5 on it, and I may just take it because while it looks crude and rudimentary, this is known colloquially as Ozark Pottery. It was actually done in Arizona and California too, and a YouTuber sent me a neat video on this. Sometimes these were done by people in sanitariums as stress relief or therapy, occupational therapy. They're made of a heavy concrete-like material, so a lot heavier than your usual ceramic, and they're generally swirled in these varying colors. Some of them can be quite beautiful and extravagant. This one's rather two-tone and definitely an acquired taste, but I personally like it, and I have collectors all over the country who look for these, so I think that's going home with me. I show crocks a lot, but I wanted to show this one because this was an ink crock. Sanford's ink and paste. This probably was paste actually because of its size. That'd be a lot of ink. Illegal to refill this jar for resale, but you see it is clean as a whistle inside. It does not have its metal handle. My guess is that this was one that was intended to be distributed and never was, and that it was never fully outfitted, and that's why it's in such great shape. It's priced at $95. You know, Crocs are very popular now. I'm sure that that's a reasonable price for what it is. This mall is really known for primitives, and whether it's the handmade log cabin on the little cupboard to the right, or the little cupboard itself, which is a nice sort of dollhouse size, or the big corner cupboard, or the open cupboard, all of these pieces are handmade. And that, again, makes them unique, and that is part of what is appealing to primitive collectors. Something that has shown the test of time, something that is hand-hewn. They use the materials they could. A professional furniture maker would not have used something that had a knot right there that's going to be seen, but this was made for use out on a farm somewhere, and they used what they had. A lot of people accessorize these with stoneware and crockery, blue and white porcelains, or early Bennington style with the spattered brown wares. These are not the Bennington you see with the date that says 1968. That's a later art studio pottery. These are Bennington because Bennington, Vermont was one of the first places that they made stoneware in this country, I believe as early as about 1800. And they did these brown spatter glazes because this was what they had material to do. And Bennington, and another one is Rockingham. All of these types of early ceramics are very desirable, particularly in the Northeast and in the states that are the original 13 colonies, all the way down the seaboard. Here's a very cute tricycle from about 1930. Look how it doesn't use tubular steel, it's actually flat steel and iron pieces. And the handles are a very hard rubber, as are the wheels and brakes. Not many of these left. A lot of them were thrown into the scrap metal drives during the Second World War. If your kids were older, well, you know, needed it for the war, so you just got rid of it. So finding these from the 20s is a hard thing to do. I don't see a price on this one. They typically sell for $150 to $200. We'll be right back with more of this video. If you're enjoying it, please hit thumbs up to like it. Hit subscribe below if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. And hit the bell to be notified of new videos. I do a new video every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, plus bonus videos. And if you comment, if you subscribe, if you like, it really helps us and it doesn't cost you anything. So thank you for that, and now back to the video. And again, because of the primitive interest here, you see some really nice quilts and coverlets, and a great looking fretwork Victorian mirror. Here's a nice fan quilt from the 1930s. And you can see here just the edge of a flower basket. This red color is desirable with quilters. This one's probably 1940s because if you look at that panel, that looks like 1940s fabric, and quilts are always dated by the newest piece of fabric in a quilt, which is why if you ever repair a quilt, get old fabric, because if you put a new piece of fabric in, it doesn't matter if it's 200 years old, it is suddenly a brand new quilt in the minds of quilters and collectors, and they won't buy it. And here we have a space with a lot of shaker style boxes and early cheese boxes and shipping boxes, as well as this really neat toll painted piece in the middle here. That floral toll painting with the tulips on that black background is going to be typical of late Victorian era country made items, so that should date to about 1880. Here's a cool thing. We see a lot of music boxes in the Victorian era. It became a very popular thing to have if you had the money. This one is the concert roller organ, and that is because when you turn the handle, you can see that it starts to move, and these little items will cause the organ to play. I'm not going to crank it too hard and make it do it, because with these old pieces like this, you really need to make sure that the bellows are good. They turned as if they were. I think it would play. I don't want to do anything to damage it, and since the owner isn't here to ask, but I believe since they have it priced at $350 that it is in working order. I never thought much about shoes being collectible until Nordstrom's buyers started buying old shoes from us at an antique mall I was involved with in Seattle. they originally started as a shoe store, so they have a museum of shoes. And this dealer has some pretty great shoes too. These baby shoes on the left, which are priced at $55, with the lighter high top and the leather fronts, are going to be typical of 1900 to 1920s construction. Next to them are these wingtips for women. They look like a 1920s or 30s style. The little cowboy boots look like something I had when I was little in the 70s. They're priced at $35. Here's some cute little plaid girls' shoes. And behind the black and white would have been her grandmother's shoes from about 1900. And then these were boys' shoes. These should date to the 1920s or 30s. They're priced at $18. For display purposes or collecting, these are really cute, and you know, the prices are not bad. Old shoes are really a fun thing, and they've got a great style. And here's one more little sampler. This looks like it's done as needlepoint on grass linen by Blanche Horup. Great colors. Something else they have that's really great here that you don't see everywhere are architectural pieces that are early and real. Part of the reason you don't see them in Florida particularly is a lot of these are made of wood, and between termites and weather, this stuff didn't last. So most of this will have been sourced somewhere else and brought here because it's popular everywhere. This cupola is particularly wonderful with the old weathered paint. The arched style looks like something I would expect to see, especially with that big lightning rod from about 1900. Several nice sets of architectural columns. These are plainer, but they're perfect for integrating into a more modern house because they're not terribly heavy with adornment, and they're priced at about $2.25 per set, which is not bad when you consider that they are structural. There's some old fretwork, this really neat cutout window pane. These banners are very pretty with the embroidery. The silk with embroidery is going to date to about 1910. They're priced at $95 each. Here's a neat old spiderweb window. I love that look. You don't find these much at all. These were right about the turn of the last century that you would see these, and you rarely see them now. And then some nice English stained glass windows around the $95 range. Can't help on a rainy day but enjoy a window full of bright, colorful glass to bring some happiness inside. These glass pieces range the gamut from 1910s to 1960s, and there's everything from cranberry to 60s amberina. It's just so much fun when you have it all together. Now I'm just going to give you a sneak peek inside this room because we're going to have to come back. This mall, for not being very large, sure has a ton of stuff, especially again in the jewelry department. So we'll spend another video going through and looking at more jewelry because there's just so much. There's a case full of Hull pottery, there's blue and white transferware, and of course fur coats and accessories. So we'll come back when we can show more. This place just goes on with wonderful things around every corner. This is referred to as stick and ball, and you can see why. These would have been transoms. They're actually on their side. I'll turn the camera so you can see how that would have looked. These are Victorian. You don't see a lot of stick and ball fretwork that's left because most of it rotted out, fell out, or was torn out, especially in the 1950s when they said if you didn't have the benefit of having a modern house, you should tear all that Victorian gingerbreading off because who wanted to look at that? Well, a lot of people, and now there's not much of it left. So these are priced at $110 each. That's about fair for what they are. I see a lot of new birdhouses, but this is fun because here's a lot of old birdhouses. I particularly like this one, which is a rather stately two-story farmhouse. Quite a lucky bird for that. Prices on these are anywhere from $40 to $150 based on complexity, and these all date to the early to mid 1900s. This case has a lot of very nice sterling silver. You see this rose repoussé. These were by the same big silver companies that made the silver tableware and flatware, Burke's, Whiting, some of those companies. These with the encrusted designs are typical of 1900s to 1920s, although they were so pretty that that style persisted afterwards. But then we have a really nice enameled deco set with the Guilloche in sterling. That is priced at $325. That's a pretty phenomenal set with all the brushes, the mirror, the two hair brushes, the two clothes brushes. You just don't see sets like that made in sterling very often. And next to it is a rather fine and impressive inkwell. Inkwells were a big deal, and if you were important and you had a desk and people were coming to see you, you needed a fancy inkwell. And there are inkwell collectors who have conventions all over the country. It's a popular area because there's some really beautiful ones. This one has winged griffins, and it is priced at $195. Should date to about 1910. Shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Well, shake your shakers. There's a whole lot, an entire case. These are 1950s through 1970s. The prices on these are really very good. I see them anywhere from $4 to $14 a set depending. I see some tomato ware there. Down on the bottom, oops, somebody bought something because I see a hole. Tobacco tins are a big area of collecting all in and of themselves. I've only had one good tobacco tin collection in my life. There's a lot of fun ones here. Scarcity matters and condition matters. Webster has a picture of Daniel Webster. Prices on these can be anywhere from $10 to $15 up to the thousands, depending on who did them. And this space is rather a relief to the eye when you've been in a place that's full of lots of little things and lots of dark and interesting things. Well, here's a lot of light and airy items. Nicely pressed linens that are vintage, well displayed, lots of tablecloths. You see a lot of open work. I see some cut work. I also see furniture that it is vintage, even though it's been painted. These actually were old pieces to begin with, so they have the right feel. And then they've set up the chaise lounge with Shelley cups and saucers. Shelley is a company from England. They went out of business in 1966. Their main pattern blank was this blank called Dainty. If you imagine it without the flowers on it, Dainty is this with the blown out sides and the little lines up the sides. You might see it better in the rim of the plate where it looks like a fan shape. On the back, the mark is going to say Shelley, England, fine bone china, and then Rosebud is this particular pattern. They did many different patterns on this blank. They'd had other shapes as well, but this is probably the most known. This one is called Blue Rock, after the flower. These trios, which is what they called the cup and saucer with a little tea plate, are selling for about $35 to $40 each now. There was a time they sold for double that, and there still are some rare patterns of Shelley that sell for considerably more. So if you see it, do a little research on your pattern. There's great books about it. There's good online information as well. And then here we have child's gowns and some Gibson Girl era gowns from about the 1910s. Look at this with the lovely butterflies. Only priced at $39. When you think of the amount of work it went to make something like this, you certainly couldn't have it made for that price today. I always mention that I like these hanging shelves. They price about $50. I have not seen one of these set with a clock before. The clock says Turner. This is by Turner, the company that made mirrors in Chicago and then became very famous for the flamingo mirrors, the flamingo prints. They did courtesan couple prints, but this is a later piece for them from about 1960, and this is how they were selling mirrors at that point. The clock is really a nice touch. These pieces are Cordey out of New Jersey. They always did pastels. These were very popular in the 1940s. The curled hair is an indication of Cordey manufacture. The applied flowers as well. These were easy to break. You really have to make sure that they are in good condition when you see these out in the marketplace. The Neapolitan set to the left here is priced at $40. And the lamp, which is hard to find, is going to price in the $295 range. There's also a nice space of vintage fashion here. It makes sense because you've got the jewelry and the boudoir to go with it. So this really is a fun mall, and just really a lot of pretty and interesting things to spend time on a wet and dreary afternoon. They also have some really good quality art glass here. The clear twist stem air twist candlesticks are Steuben. Air twist is something we see as early as the 1830s and 40s, but by the 1950s there was a real revival in interest of early glassware, and the air twist also had a modern feel, so Steuben came out with it at that time. The cut piece with the bird behind is Hawkes, H-A-W-K-E-S. They sometimes have an acid mark on their pieces. They made good quality crystal as well. The decanter is Baccarat. If you like crystal, this is a wonderful time to be buying it because the prices are way down from where they were at their peak. But I went into a friend's house who had nothing but crystal and glassware in adornments, and the light just jumped room to room. There was so much sparkle. Every time the sun came in, it was like a rainbow effect. A lot of people have given up crystal for colored glass because they want color, but if you use crystal right, the crystal will create the entire spectrum of the rainbow for you. This sterling silver tea set is Tiffany. It is a 3-piece and it is priced at about $1,900. Tiffany & Company is highly regarded because of the fantastic quality. They have these nice stoppers, which are probably ivory, but they're such small amounts that they are not illegal to sell because they're under 15% of the total item, and because they were made before 1900. That was to keep the handles from getting too hot so that you could have a sterling handle and still pick it up without burning yourself. And then this set of sherbets is priced a little over $1,000 because they're sterling silver. The designer is Lapalia. And then if you like American sterling, this is Grand Baroque. Grand Baroque was done by Wallace Sterling and is one of the most popular patterns ever. It has this very heavy, ornate handle, and Grand Baroque has stood the test of time. It is a pattern that has been made for decades. Here's some fun amber and a Bakelite horse pin with the charms. Those horse pins with charms usually are in a few $100 range these days. There are reproductions, so do be careful. There's ways to tell, particularly if there's a lot of filing marks on the back. That may be lucite made to look like Bakelite. Well, I was going to take my pond boat and go sailing today, but it's gotten kind of rainy here. One good thing about St. Pete in the summertime is it's the off season, and with people worried about social distancing now, ironically, Florida beaches in summer are a great place to go because it's not the peak season. There's air conditioning everywhere. There's a lot of hotels that have just sanitized because there's been nothing to do and the occupancy's way down. So if you're looking for a place to go, this is a wonderful antique destination. There's, I think, 6 antique malls and a bunch of shops in town and lots of stuff to do here as well. So we'll hope to see you soon, and we're glad that we're open again. Take care now. This is George the Antique Nomad on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope occasionally. And I'll see you again here on YouTube soon. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community, here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.